This is a reading from Dispatch International. Freedom of the press cannot be limited without being lost. For more news and opinion in English, Danish, German, and Swedish, go to dispatch-international.com. Author Jannich Kofoed. Title: Islamic Diplomacy Triumphs Over EU Flagellants. Summary: once again, a Western institution has been humiliated by determined envoys from the Islamic world. Behind the title High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy hides Baroness Catherine Ashton, probably the most insecure, most ignorant, and weakest top bureaucrat that the EU could possibly send to meet a group of self-confident and demanding men who knew exactly what they wanted, and got it. After the meeting on September 21st, the Arab League chairman Nabil al-Arabi could triumphantly showcase a joint statement by him, the Secretary-General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, and the President of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, and the still dazzled and confused EU Baroness. After a few ritual incantations which celebrated freedom of religion, tolerance and freedom of expression, plus a rejection of violence in general, the EU, the Arab League, the OIC and the OAU promised to respect all prophets. The reason for this ceremony was of course the 12-minute, low-budget movie about the Prophet Muhammad. If the film's trailer is any indication, the movie looks very poor. The story itself is interesting, but the lines are awkward and unnatural, the surroundings appear equally unconvincing, clothing and props even worse, and the director has not managed to get the actors to believe in their roles. Many are suggesting that the movie's quality is even worse than the Arab TV series, which are received by hundreds of thousands of satellite dishes in the Western world. Yet the movie has nevertheless provoked bitter tears among devout Muslims, a sadness that quickly turned into raging fury and bloodshed. The anguish of Muslims at the production of the film insulting Islam, the posting of its trailer on the internet and other similar acts is shared by all individuals and communities who refuse to allow religion to be used to fuel provocation, confrontation and extremism, the declaration states. And this is supposed to have international, legal consequences. We reiterate our strong commitment to take further measures and to work for an international consensus on tolerance and full respect of religion, including on the basis of UN Human Rights Council Resolution 1618. The resolution was passed in December 2011 and promises to fight against intolerance, negative stereotyping, stigmatization, discrimination, incitement to violence, and violence against individuals because of their religion or beliefs. One might think that such a wording would be worse than a double-edged sword for the Islamic world, given that Muslims are not regularly humiliated, ridiculed, mocked, robbed, raped, or murdered in the Christian world, whereas this regularly happens to Christians in the Islamic world. But firstly, these kinds of resolutions are never used internally in Islamic countries, and secondly, the Islamic world currently feels that the winds are in its favor. So in a decades-long diplomatic campaign by Islamic countries to exploit the West's self-torment and weakness to give Islam a special status, Resolution 1618 is yet another conquest of infidel territory. Back in 2001, the same UN Human Rights Council passed a resolution against defamation of religions and against Islamophobia, a nearly irresistible urge to hate Islam. In March 2007, the UN General Assembly by a majority of 108 passed a resolution mentioning only Islam as a victim of persecution and announced that after September 11th, Islam became associated with terrorism, violence and intolerance. This resolution is considered something of a coup in mass psychology. The Islamic world succeeded in exploiting the September 11th attacks and the West's permanent feelings of guilt so that the UN denounced the Clash of Civilizations thesis in favor of the UN initiative Alliance of Civilizations. The EU's recent appeasement is not that different from the Obama administration's response to this tiny anti-Islamic home video, which Secretary of State Hillary Clinton described as disgusting. President Obama in December of last year made the United States the host for the Istanbul process, a blackmail initiative by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, which coincidentally under the concept of terrorism also mentioned offending the honor of others. But among EU politicians, the joint declaration of September 21st has also attracted attention. Member of the European Parliament for the Danish People's Party Morten Messerschmidt stated on the same day if the EU chooses to enter into such an agreement, then all EU citizens must rely upon a definition of freedom of expression that is as far away from Europe as one can get. It is worth remembering that when Denmark suffered the wrath of the Islamic world, there was no support to be had from the EU. Today, the Muhammad cartoons crisis has become a part of the Danish cultural heritage, and it is therefore worth keeping an eye on how the 13 Danish politicians relate to the fact that the EU, also on behalf of Denmark, flagellates itself to suck up to the Islamic world. This has been a reading from Dispatch International. Freedom of the press cannot be limited without being lost. For more news and opinion in English, Danish, German, and Swedish, go to dispatch-international.com.